Tēnā koutou, te whānau o Auckland Unitarian. Tēnā koutou ngā manuhiri, nau mai, haere mai. Ki tenei whare karakia o te atua. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou, katoa. Good morning. We welcome you this morning into this space which has been made sacred by Auckland Unitarians for 118 years. To those of you who are visitors here for the first time, thank you again for being with us. If you are lonely, here you will find a warm companionship. Here, in this sanctuary of hope, you can find a new seat at the table of life and feast yourself on love and fellowship. And you will not hunger for the touch of a human hand or an embrace of your searching spirit. If you seek to understand, here you will be encouraged in your search. Wonderful pathways will be lit unto you, and wherever your journeys take you, you will know that you can always come home again to this place made sacred by our love for you. This is a sanctuary of the soul. There are no boundaries in this cathedral of hope. I should have started with this. Good morning, my name is John DeLeo. I will be conducting our service this morning, and I am happy to welcome Jean McElhaney here, who will be doing our talk this morning. I would also like to remind everyone that you are all invited to join us for morning tea immediately following our service. It is our sacrament of hospitality. Please join us. It wouldn't be complete without you. For our opening words today, I've chosen this quotation, which I forgot to write the citation down for. Spirit of life and hope, we turn our minds and hearts again toward thee. Awaken us again to the mysteries that humble us, the realities that orient us, the truths that judge and guide us, the beauty that informs and ravishes us, the love that nurtures us, the fellowship that sustains us, the creativity that heightens and deepens and reorders our living, that we may give ourselves in honesty and openness to the larger life before us. With this. There we go. In the mystery of life about us, there is light. It gives us a place to be, to grow, and to rejoice together. It opens the pathway to love. In this place of friendship, there is freedom. Let the light we kindle go before us, strong in hope, wide in goodwill, inviting the day to come. And now it's my privilege to introduce our speaker this morning, Jean McElhaney. Jean is a social worker and counselor, and she currently works as a trainer at the Center for Nonviolent Communication. When she gets up to talk, she'll tell you a little bit more about herself and what has interested her in the topic today, which is how can awareness of death enrich life? Jean?
Thank you, John, for that introduction and all the support in the creation of this service. And thank you, Clay, for inviting me. And thank you, everyone, for your attention and your presence, for showing up. I appreciate all of that. So, who am I and why am I into this topic? Why am I into this topic of death? I know when I put out on Neighborly that I was interested in finding a co-host for a Death Cafe. I got such interesting comments back, like, what's wrong with you? Are you sick? Are you morbid? So it is an interesting thing, like, how am I here talking about this? And I don't know what exactly started my interest. I can't find a particular one thing going way back, but I have been interested for quite some time. And then, of course, the death of my the death of one of my parents and the imminent death of my other parent makes it more personal. But in terms of credentials, if that matters, I actually don't think that matters very much. But I can let you know that I am ordained as an interfaith minister, and I have been to death doula training in Maui this April. And I've been to various other kinds of talks and workshops about death, and I'm just interested in this question of how can awareness of death enrich our lives. So I have a quote for you. Therefore, because death stirs people to seek answers to important spiritual questions, it becomes the greatest servant of humanity, rather than its most feared enemy. That's Lord Krishna to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. For me, that aligns so beautifully with some of the principles of this sacred space, especially the one about a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I love that. So for me, there really is this search for meaning in death and meaning in life. How does the topic of death, how does the reality of death make life that much more meaningful? We all know it's inevitable. We kind of know it, but many times we prefer not to actually think about it. We prefer to shove it off. Like some of the people who commented on my neighborly post. They're like, no, I want to focus on being alive. Yes, there's a both and to it, I think. So I think it seems to me that there's a counter movement to this whole pushing away thing. I have seen the rise of death cafes in New Zealand and other places. There are coffin clubs where people gather to make their own coffin ahead of time and be creative and express themselves, so that it's a way to kind of celebrate who they've been. There are death over dinner gatherings. There are threshold choirs. There's a cadence choir here in Auckland of a group of people that goes to sing to people who are seriously ill or dying. And I know here in this community there was a study group on death. I think it was last year, wasn't it? And some of you may have gone. So I think there is this growing interest in making meaning. In Christchurch this weekend, there's an entire conference called Death Matters with many different presenters, and I believe over 200 people signed up as participants. And I have a quote from the Christchurch Death Cafe founder that sort of sets the tone here. She says, "I love talking about death because it reminds us that our time here is limited. Death matters for all of us because it helps us pause and prioritize what is truly important." She says, "When we accept our own mortality, we make more authentic choices and we live more creative, connected, and meaningful lives in the process." For me, that's one of the ways that death, our awareness of death, can enhance our lives. But before I say too much more, I want to pause actually and acknowledge that here in this room, here in this space, there could be many different things coming up for people in relation to this topic. Some of you, some of us, may have been recently touched by death. Is there anyone here who has experienced within the last year or so the death of someone close to you? Kind of nod or raise your hand. Yeah, several people. So it's not really so far away. And some of us ourselves may be dealing with a life-limiting diagnosis. Some people may be supporting a friend or a family member who has such a diagnosis. And some of us, maybe many of us, have had the experience that the death of someone in our lives meant our lives were never the same again. So acknowledging these things can stir up some feelings, and I just want to make space for that. Make space, and I invite you to just Notice what's happening in your body, what's happening in your breath, and what's happening in your heart as we bring this topic into awareness. By noticing these things, we can tap into those deeper spaces of our heart's longings for connection, for compassion, meaning, and purpose, and ultimately for love beyond belief. I saw that when I looked on the website for this space, and I thought, that's really it. That's what it's about, love beyond belief. Like perhaps many of us in today's world, I was rather late in life before being present to someone's passing away. My father died on my 50th birthday. Up until then, I had read about death, I had thought about it some, I'd had grandparents die, but they were in a faraway state. So yes, I'm one of the Americans. So I lived in Wisconsin, and my grandparents were in Nebraska, and I went there, and I didn't see them all that much. I wasn't present at their death. So I will say that birthday, that death day, definitely brought the whole topic of mortality much more in my face, much more deep in my sense of appreciation for the mystery of it all. And then, almost 3 years ago, I was awakened in the middle of the night by a call from the University of Wisconsin Hospital. And an emergency room doctor told me that she had treated my mother that night, and the prognosis did not look good. And she had a life-threatening diagnosis, and there was a referral made to hospice, which in that part of the world usually means that death is expected in 6 months or less. So I went back to see her at Thanksgiving that year. That was Thanksgiving 2016, yeah. And it was amazing. It was amazing because it's like the minute I walked into that room, there was grace. There was grace. It's like all the old anger, the stories, the expectations, and the wounds. I don't know. I can remember it, but it's like it sort of fell away and it didn't matter anymore. So we talked about death. We talked about what she wanted for her funeral. We forgave ourselves and each other. What a gift. I can guarantee you that conversation, well, I can't guarantee anything really, but I am pretty sure that conversation, that and other conversations would not have happened without that diagnosis and the grace of that time. And interestingly, she lives on, actually. She's still alive. So death follows its own time frame. It can be quite unpredictable as we know. But it was that acknowledgement of her mortality that enhanced our connection. It refined it to kind of hone in on some really essential qualities. And then in some ways we could release our personal history into something more universal, something less personal and more transcendent. So as I thought about this, I came up with a number of ways that it seemed to me anyway, facing the inevitability of death can enhance life. Or as the motto for the death doula training, showing up for death and nourishing life. So the first way is it helps us focus on what really matters and what our priorities are. What really matters to me is often a conversation with a dear friend. No, it doesn't matter what my grades were. In the end, it doesn't matter how much money is in the bank. I mean, it matters, yeah, to some degree while I'm alive. But in the very end, what really matters is how am I going to relate to people? How am I going to relate to people in my life? What really matters to me is love, beauty, meaning, and contribution. And I don't want to miss those things while I'm alive. I don't want to focus so much on there might be socks lying around or coffee cups lying around the house, right? And I can get irritated. But here's the situation. If I think about the person whose socks they are, and I remember that we're all mortal. And I think, wow, someday there might not be socks lying around. There might not be those coffee cups. Then those things that can irritate me actually become a reminder to be grateful for this person in my life. I am so grateful. And so from that perspective, who cares about the socks? It's the person whose socks they are that matters to me. And then I either let go of it, right? I let go of it, or I have a lightness about me and maybe a sense of humor or playfulness when I address it. So, yeah, that's how it works in my daily life. That's one example. Kind of flowing from that, another way that awareness of death can be a life enhancer is that we can be more motivated to address that relationship stuff, whether it's friends or family members. We want to do it sooner rather than later, because later may or may not come. And what's true is many people on their deathbeds, that becomes quite a concern. They want to express their regrets. They want to forgive and be forgiven. They want to sort of go out with a sense of peace and a sense that all that stuff has been cleared away. So what if, instead of waiting, you let people know now if there's something that feels unfinished between you? What if we could find the courage to acknowledge now the actions we've done that might have stimulated pain for someone, and ask them now, is there anything I can do to make it right? They might not even remember it. Or you might find that just by acknowledging it, it clears some space between you, and it can ease any kind of burden of guilt that you might be carrying. Or you could let them know that you forgive them for something from the past. Again, so there can be more peace and ease between you, a stronger sense of connection. And oh yeah, what if we could forgive ourselves? What if we could say, you know what, in the big scheme of things, it's the love that matters. It's my intention that matters. And I want to take responsibility for the impact of my actions. And I want to do that from a place of care, from a place of compassion. So it's about forgiveness, it's about love, it's about expressing our love while we can. So I know some people in some families say, I love you, more readily than others. And some people show their love with actions or with touch or just spending time together. But you know what? In the course of how busy life can get, it can be easy to sort of go on autopilot and forget to express that care. So awareness of the impermanence of life can be that sort of bittersweet reminder to let the people in your life know that they matter to you. To really savor your relationships. What if we let death remind us that what really matters is to love and be loved unabashedly, full-heartedly? A third way that death can enhance life is it can open us up to the relationship between grief and gratitude. Francis Weller writes, "The work of the mature person is to carry grief in one hand and gratitude in the other, and to be stretched large by them. How much sorrow can I hold? That's how much gratitude I can give. If I carry only grief, I'll bend toward cynicism and despair. If I have only gratitude, I'll become saccharine, and I won't develop much compassion for other people's suffering. Grief keeps the heart fluid and soft, which helps make compassion possible." Knowing that everything is impermanent can spark profound grief. On my drive here, I was listening to a radio program about climate catastrophe, profound grief, and also profound gratitude for this created world. So one of the ways that we can honor the impermanence is to love what's here right now so fully, and to grieve as we see signs that some of the things in the forms of life that we care about might be changing, might be passing away. So I've noticed that for myself, I really want to pay attention to those moments, those precious moments, like the light in the sky when there's about to be a rainbow, the magnolia blossoms of spring, the sound of the tuis, the feel of the beach under bare feet. If you thought this was going to be your last spring ever, wouldn't that beach be even more amazing? Even more precious? Sometimes I spontaneously just say, wow, thank you, right out loud when I experience something like that. So what if we all allowed ourselves to really savor these precious moments? A fourth way is that we can surrender. We can let go of that illusion that it's up to us to control everything. Because death kind of puts it right in our face that no, we can't. So we can kind of surrender to some degree into the natural rhythms of life and into interdependence as well. Respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Because death reminds us that there were hands welcoming us into this world, and it will be other people's hands who care for our body as we are dying and after we've died. None of us can get through life all by ourselves. It's just not how it works. So if we surrender into that and find the gift of that, we can learn to relax into the mystery of a bigger picture. And we can learn from nature about how to do this. We can watch the cycles of flowers blooming, beautiful blooming and falling away. All around us there are teachers. There are many more, but I do have just one more that I'm going to talk about today, and that is that in some ways, when we learn to surrender, death can spark an inquiry into what we want our legacy to be and what we want to leave behind. For me, after I experienced clearing out my mother's apartment, I thought, whoa, I know what I don't want to leave behind. I don't want to leave behind all this stuff. So it has sparked the beginning of what I'm hoping is going to be a massive decluttering project. So it will take some time. So that's one of the ways in which it becomes practical. It becomes very practical. It might be more of a spiritual legacy, or it might be a book, or it might be a song, or a letter for little ones who can't even read yet. So, it's an inquiry. What do you want to be remembered for? And what do you want to leave behind? Maybe you want to leave behind some stories of how life has been magical for you, or how you dealt with it when life wasn't so magical. So just to summarize, facing death can enhance our lives by helping us know what really matters, helping us prioritize our time and energy, and helping us relax about the little irritations. It can motivate us to do the relational work of forgiveness and of expressing our care and our love. Death can open us up to the bittersweet relationship between grief and gratitude. It can help us tune in to the cycles of nature, of birth and death, morning and night, and feel a sense of kinship with the others, a sense of kinship in our shared humanity and our shared mortality, our sense of belonging in that interdependent web. And we can surrender that illusion of control while also taking charge of our own choices and what we want to leave behind. So I want to close with a quote that I think is from Thich Nhat Hanh, and then I'll open it up for some brief discussion. I am going to die. You are going to die. We are all going to die. And in this present moment, we are alive. We are alive in the here and now. Thank you so much for showing up. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so now I would love to hear if there's any comments on what I've shared. Anything maybe about how death has changed your life? Anything about perhaps the relationship between grief and gratitude? Or maybe even something about how awareness of death might change your choices of how you spend your time today. All right, so I believe I come down here. Turn this on. Have a green light. Would anyone like to share something? It's on. You have to hold it like an ice cream cone, is my understanding. Yes, thank you.
I haven't really thought about what I want to say because I've been concentrating on what you were saying and agreeing all along the way. I'm 82 and 9 months, and the average age in which women die in this country is 83 and 9 months, I think. So I've got another year, yeah. Next September, if I'm still here, I'm very lucky. Death doesn't worry me. The house is not ready. The house is not ready. My son says, don't die and leave all this stuff. But it's become something that we can talk about and joke about. My granddaughters are 11 and a half and 13. They've got their names down for certain items as soon as I go. And this happened when my sister died. They knew that they would be able to get the things they liked, and that worked out well. Why not? They're living on. It's only stuff, you know? So I know where my phone's going and where my computer's going, and they're not interested in the jewelry. Not at all, which is good, really. So I was at a rationalist meeting on Friday, and one of the men said there, am I still the senior member here? He was 85. So he's holding on to his post. Yeah. I don't think I've got much else to say. Maybe somebody else would like to.
Hi, I'm Vivian. My dad died when I was 26 years old. And it was he had cancer for 6 years, and he had actually had quality of life, so it wasn't a horrible death or anything like that. He went quite quick at the end. But my family, and I don't know where it came from, pretended that he was getting well. So there was this pretense for the whole 6 years. You know, he obviously had prostate cancer, and he had radiotherapy, but he actually had, as I said, good quality for the 6 years. But the last few weeks, it was all, you know, he went to hospital for the last 3 weeks. And when I get out and when I get better, but I look back and think, what a pity. He was a lovely man, so there was nothing, we had a great relationship, so there was nothing to forgive, there was no problems with relationships. But I still think I missed something there, some experience of being able to talk to him about his coming death.
Hi, I'm Craig. I've lost 5 friends who all passed away in their 50s. And I would say none of them were expected to go that early. And so I guess my biggest lesson for that was that death can come unexpectedly. You may not see it coming at all. And it also reminds me that it's easy to go through life thinking you've got plenty of time. And so you live your life in that way, and then suddenly you don't have plenty of time. And I think if we approach life in that way, that we don't have plenty of time, our life might be richer and fuller for that.
As you were speaking and as we've been talking, it made me think just, we don't want to think about death, but sometimes death shows us a different side of people, an unexpected side, and sometimes that's a negative. I've had people in my family pass and family members who, wow, really never thought we'd see them act that way. But I also remember my grandmother passed while John and I were attending a conference. We are both members of it. It's a professional engineering fraternity. And she passed the morning of the last day of the conference. And my mom called me and we made plans to leave that afternoon instead of flying back home to Washington, D.C., where we were living. Instead, I booked a car and we were driving from Phoenix up to northern Utah, where my family was. And John went in, he was our chapter's rep, and to the last business meeting, there's part of the meetings where they ask, is there anyone in need? Do we have any brothers in need? And John stood up and mentioned that my grandmother had passed that morning. And immediately after that meeting let out, we had brothers from another chapter who were, very, I would say rough, but just, you would never expect them, these were all men, but, 20-something men, these are university age, you would not expect them to openly show compassion, and every single brother in that chapter who I knew came up and hugged me and said, "We're so sorry for your loss." So you see unexpected things. Death can bring out sides of people that we haven't seen, and it can be a wonderful thing.
Thank you for your incredibly eloquent and inspiring talk this morning. It reminded me of a movie that I saw a few weeks ago. It was part of the film festival here, but I saw it in the U.S., called The Farewell. And I think it highlights the fact that different cultures deal with death in different ways. And this happened to be a film about a Chinese family who traditionally did not tell the grandmother that she was terminally ill, and went to every length to protect her and keep that information. And I went away thinking how fortunate we are in our society where we actually can, or at least my experience has been that one can share this, but it is interesting to see the different ways in which cultures manage death.
Yes, I saw that movie last week, so I was glad you mentioned it. Yeah, cultural differences and also differences between families, definitely. And I'm even noticing how we use language. We can kind of hide death by using language like past instead of die. Past, like what they passed you on the highway, on the motorway? No, it's a little different. We don't really want to say the language. We don't want to have that shock of the reality of it in our face. And in a way maybe that is kinder, or maybe not, I don't know. Just to notice that.
Thank you for mentioning the film, Betsy. It just reminded me of two things that we've seen on television recently that combine death and terrible grief with comedy. Gervais, called Afterlife. Yeah, and then another one we just saw it's an old film, but we saw it recently called About Time, and it's about a man who he and his son have the power to go back in time and change things just to a certain point, and there's a point at which his son has to give up that ability to keep revisiting his father in order to have another child. It's a rom-com, but it's a very beautiful film. And I just wanted to quickly mention that we're the Before I Die project. Are you aware of that? It's an art project that's been happening internationally for about, I think since about 2012, and it's where a blackboard is erected in a public space, and the words "Before I Die" are written in paint, and then there's chalk for people to fill in things that are important to them. And at the moment, the management committee are investigating us having one of these boards out the front of the church. So watch this space, and if you'd like to be part of that project, let me know.
Oh, that sounds so cool. Also, if you want to continue and deepen into this topic, a moment of shameless self-promotion, but it's not really my self-promotion. It's not about me, but a colleague and I are organizing a workshop on this topic, a 2-day workshop. We want to do it in Christchurch and also in Auckland in October. So I have a couple of flyers in the back. Is there any last comments before we close?
Look, I know what you're saying, but I have no intention of dying. I can't die for the life in me. It's just the way the oak tree grows.
Okay, good luck with that.
I'm not relying on that.
Okay.
I'm not relying on that. The Apostle Paul said, if you have eternal life, then you can live it as it is this life.
Yes, well, see, there's that. You know, there is
I know
that.
what you're saying.
No,
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
It's the other side of it as well.
Yeah, there are many sides, many perspectives, many beliefs, and there's a both and to a lot of this. You know, in a way, the body dies, and maybe life continues, and there's a change in form. And other people may believe other things. Some people believe that's it. That's it. The body's gone, we're gone. Other people don't, you know, so it's an interesting thing to look at is how do our beliefs change how we live our lives, how we approach death. This is a very rich topic, and I'm so grateful for your companionship in exploring it today. Thank you.
For our closing words today, if you are who you were, and if the person next to you is who he or she was, if none of us has changed since the day we came in here, we have failed. The purpose of this community, of any church, temple, zendo, mosque, is to help its people grow. We do this through encounters with the unknown, in ourselves, in one another, in the other, whoever that might be for us, however hard that might be, because these encounters have many gifts to offer.